what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me across the table and on the other microphone in this room is Chris Fry. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I am a couple of weeks closer since we last recorded to seeing Mickey 17, so I'm happy.
Yeah, you are within weeks. Some reviews are starting to pop up. I'm not reading any. I hope you do not either.
I have not read a review, but I have seen a star rating from a critic that I like, and on Letterboxd, and I was happy.
Okay,
So,
all right. Well, just no expectations.
No.
Okay.
But
we're really going to try to work on this in 2025, like how we manage our expectations for films, because that is the worst enemy of the movie-going experience, I think, is expectations. And we're going to try to manage that. But we're not here to talk about Mickey 17 today. That'll be at least another couple weeks.
yes,
I think it's March 7th, 17th,
I
somewhere
think
there.
so. So yeah,
Within weeks. Within weeks.
We're
of
getting
that.
closer.
Okay, we will get to that. But today we're going to be reviewing a different film. We're going to be reviewing the film The Gorge, starring Miles Teller and Anna Taylor-Joy. That is an Apple TV Plus exclusive film that we're going to be discussing from director Scott Derrickson. After that review of The Gorge, we're going to have a little, kind of a mini review, but also I have a little talking I want to do about the new Marvel movie, Captain America Brave New World, which it turns out we both saw. So we're going to share some thoughts on it, but I want to put it into a broader context of what's happening in the film critic world right now.
okay.
Then I think we're going to show a little trailer for a film coming out later this year that I'm interested and excited about at this point. Had just made aware of this past weekend, so excited to see your take on it, Chris, when I share that trailer with you later. And then I think you have a recommendation to share with us as well.
Yes.
A film recommendation, one of Chris Fry's patented film recommendations for you of something he recommends you might want to check out. So we have a lot to get to. We do have to make up for a week. We took a week off last week.
That's true.
I haven't got through all the upset fan mail from that decision to take the week off, but I know people were disappointed. We're hoping to get their confidence back by coming back this week with a new episode. So here we are. Lots to do. Are you ready to get started, Chris?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, here we go with our review of The Gorge.
I have new orders that require me to go dark for at least a year, maybe more. A special assignment in an undisclosed location.
As an elite sniper, are you presently under any private or military contract?
No, there's not a lot of reasons for me right now.
What if I gave you a reason?
Two highly trained operatives, played by Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, are appointed to posts in guard towers on opposite sides of a vast and highly classified gorge, protecting the world from an undisclosed, mysterious evil that lurks within. They bond from a distance while trying to stay vigilant in defending against an unseen enemy. When the cataclysmic threat to humanity is revealed to them, they must work together in a test of both their physical and mental strength to keep the secret in the gorge before it's too late. Director Scott Derrickson, who directed The Gorge, is generally known for some horror films like Sinister, Deliver Us from Evil, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I first really heard of him when he made Doctor Strange for the MCU. Then I did watch a subsequent film of his, which kind of went back to kind of more of his roots, per se, The Black Phone, which was successful, and he's going to be doing a sequel for that. But in between, he made this film, The Gorge, which premiered on Apple TV Plus on Valentine's Day. Alan, what was your experience with The Gorge, and do you think it is more of his familiar realm of like horror films, or do you think he was trying to do something different, like he did with Doctor Strange.
Well, I mean, he's trying to do something different. I think, yes, he's trying to do something different.
Okay.
There are some moments and times where you see him dipping into his familiar genres with this film.
Sure.
This is a film that is trying to do a lot in terms of genre, in that it has a lot of different things going on within it. And I'll say half of it's very successful.
Okay.
Half of it's not, to me, anyway, my take on it.
Okay.
I think this is a film that has a really great, interesting premise. Mm-hmm. I think it has a really interesting setup. I like where this film was taking me for about the first half of the film. Then there is a shift.
Sure.
An action sequence that leads to a completely different environment, completely different setup, and kind of a whole different stakes to the film. And that's a part of the film where I feel like it lost its way, and I feel like any interest it built up in the first half, it squandered a little bit by that point.
Okay.
So I found myself ultimately a little disappointed in the film, although I think by the end it tried to recover what it was hoping this movie could be, or I was hoping this movie could be. It wasn't 100% successful.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, not even that. No, just the expectations set up by the initial first half of the film, where the film's going. So I've got a lot of thoughts on this film. I don't want to go into details yet. I want to get your thoughts, Chris, but I feel like this is a partially successful film.
Okay.
I think it's a decent, enjoyable watch. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. I'm not going to say it's not worth people's time. I think some people would enjoy watching this, and it being on Apple TV Plus and it not being something you're paying $15 at the movie theater to go see, I think does help a little bit. But man, it did lose me in the second half, and not because of the concept. It's just the way the film just became very uninteresting at that point, where I feel like it had built up a level of interest that I was really on board for, and then it just lost it once it became pretty clear what was going on, what had happened, what the situation was, what the whole mystery was. I don't think it did a very good job of keeping our interest in that as long as it could have. So anyway, I want to hear your thoughts, and then we can get into some details. But.
So we did take a week off. You addressed that. One of the films that we might have reviewed last week, had we had a podcast, might have been the film Hard Eyes. So don't worry, listeners. You're going to get a little bit of a review of that. We're going to then talk about Brave New World. So we're kind of making up for lost time here.
Very good.
Why do I bring up Hard Eyes? Well, in my intro, you heard me kind of say, this film was released on Valentine's Day on Apple TV Plus. What might have been the thinking behind that? Hard Eyes, get a little bit, you probably have heard of that film. It was a genre horror film. The title suggests it has something to do with Valentine's Day. Well, sure enough, it does. And it was promoted as like a horror comedy, but specifically like go with your date, you'll have a fun time. So it was an interesting, and that one was released in theaters. That film, just briefly, I liked it. It didn't all work for me, but I appreciated what it was trying to do. And it was very much, if anything, I was kind of surprised how much it leaned into the romantic part of it. And I was kind of like, I was expecting it to kind of have that, but not lean as heavily as it did into that. So if anything, I may have been a little bored sometimes by that.
Sure.
But the comedy where it was by the same guy who did Werewolves Within that we had reviewed long time ago.
Oh, he did that one too?
Yeah, so he did that, and his follow-up was kind of Hard Eyes. So that was 2023 when he did Werewolves Within. So same director, Josh Rubin. So he does kind of this interesting mixture thing. So the reason I bring that up is Scott Derrickson here, I think, which you mentioned, there are kind of two halves to this film. And I think it's fair to say second half is kind of like exploration and what the Gorge is. Okay, first half is not that. And the first half kind of makes sense why they released it on Valentine's Day. Because, yes, these two characters do not know each other. They're across the gorge. But then because of they know each other are there, they can see each other because they have binoculars and stuff. And, yes, they do forge, a friendship and stuff. Even though you could see where it was going, it still worked for me. I still liked it. As well. And I think I've always liked Anya Taylor-Joy. Miles Teller, I think I've kind of been back and forth on, but I think he was actually really good here because he plays this like tough operative guy, but yet you can tell there's a little bit more to him, but not in like a dorky, cheesy way. You know, like he's like walking around quoting Shakespeare or something. Like it worked. And I think without those two leads, I don't think the film would have been as successful as it was, especially when it goes into the second part, which is that gorge exploration. I don't think it would have been as successful for me, but I can see how this is kind of a good Valentine's movie if the guy likes action movies and he could convince his girlfriend to watch it with him or whatever. It works on that level. I think when it does make the shift into an action movie, basically, instead of like a mystery type thing, and a little bit of a romance, of course, because these two, but when it shifts into just a straight out action film later, maybe it's not as successful. I agree it's not as successful as it is in the first part, but I was okay ultimately with where it went because I don't know, it ended up working, and maybe it wasn't as smooth as it could have been, but it was okay. If anything, I was a little disappointed because I'd seen her in the trailer, and I love Sigourney Weaver. She wasn't in the film as much as I was hoping, but I don't know.
Well,
So
I think
just overall thoughts.
well, I'm with you. Again, on the first half of the film, I do think the romance, it got a little meat cutie, a little too much at some points, but it worked okay. I was fine with it. I was okay with it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You mentioned about if there there was something you talk about the meat cutie thing. Two things. We know Miles Teller from Whiplash, a film which I'm not as high on as I believe you are.
Yes, correct.
Anya Taylor-Joy, we know her from bunches of different things, but one of the things she did for Netflix was The Queen's Gambit. Okay. There's a scene, there's chess in this film.
Yes.
I did not remember that she was Queen Gambit, so that didn't bother me. But what did bother me, and obviously some people it did bother, I've seen online, like they were like, oh, they're just referencing, they had to reference Queen's Gambit chess and they had to reference Whiplash. That reference I did notice, and it bothered me a lot. Now, it was being
the drumming?
played for laughs, but they kind of have like this drumming competition across the gorge. And I was like, ugh. But it's like winking towards Miles Teller. But overall, like, that bothered me more than like kind of the maybe a little predictable explanation of the gorge and how that kind of played out. And it's very heavy CGI, which I can see because of what was down there and what had to happen. But
I think the problem with the whole mystery element to it and trying to build up and make that second half more interesting. Because honestly, I was just bored once we got down to the into the gorge and you start dealing with the things there. Because I feel like the movie just tipped its hand so early on what's going on? All right, there's yes, Sigourney Weaver's in the movie, and yes, as soon as you meet her, you're like, oh yeah, she's bad.
Up, yeah.
She's not a good person. You could tell that. I mean, that's not even a spoiler. That is in the first 10 minutes of the film.
For me, it was kind of fun because of her role in the films that I'm very high on. The Alien films, where she has something, she's the good protagonist, and in this, for roles basically to be flipped, I found kind of fun.
No, I like her being the bad guy. It's just don't base a mystery off of it when you basically telegraph it in the first 10 minutes. Oh yeah, she's no good. And all the mystery around it. And then there's like a comment made about, oh, there were 2,800 soldiers that went down in the gorge and never came back, and we don't know what happened to them. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I know what's going on here. It's like, honestly, once the first things start crawling out.
Right.
And that's like 20 minutes into the film. It's like,
sure.
You kind of know the deal. And honestly, I hated all the exposition that went into once you got down into all the, how many times have we seen a trope of somebody finds a film reel that they can just easily cue up and everything plays perfectly. And it's right at the moment where somebody's explaining exactly what's happening in like a 2-minute sequence. I'm like, oh, so lazy. I didn't even want any explanation. I honestly think the film would have worked better without any of that explanation there. It's like, yes, this is a mysterious area. This is a mysterious thing. We don't really know the deal, but let's focus in on these two people, the relationship they formed, and how they're going to help and rescue each other through this situation. I don't care. Like, I do not care what is happening, what caused the situation. And I think the film spends way too much energy and time thinking that we do care when we don't. We care about these two people. That's what you got us invested in the first half of the movie.
Gotcha.
So it kind of just squandered, I think, kind of what was built up a little bit for me. So, but I will say,
I can see that.
yeah, I think though the premise and the setup and the act and the relationship with these two made it enough where I, even despite me being bored in that second half, I still wanted to find out where it was going to go. I still wanted to get to an ending and see what the resolution was going to be with these two. So ultimately, the film did keep me engaged because of that, but it tried really hard to lose me in that second half. And it's just, and again, it's nothing against the premise. It's nothing against the genre that it dips into. I'm a fan of all of that. It was just we need to figure this out, and we're going to run into different buildings and rooms to find out exactly what we need. And hey, here's a film. We're going to cue it up, and it's playing. It tells us exactly what's happening, and all that is just so boring. It's just boring, and it became just a shoot 'em up fest. For a good 20, 30 minutes of the film. It really tried hard to lose me in that second half, but it did enough in the first half to keep me interested to the end. So I'm going to come out overall positive on the film, but I am saying I do think it struggles with an identity crisis about halfway through the movie, where it was really good with the identity it had crafted in that first half. I wish it had kind of stuck with that. So,
similarly, I think we're basically on the same page. I guess I kind of felt when I was watching the film, and I liked the first part as much as I did, and you do get a little glimpse of what's in the gorge. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like it as much as it gets. And sure enough, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I still thought, the promise I kind of felt like was this is basically trying to do two things. It's trying to be a romance, but trying to also be, sci-fi thing. And so for that, it was, it worked. Kind of like Hard Eyes. It's like you try to do a horror film that's also a romance. It's like, well, okay, a comedy, So it worked well enough. I wish the second part, like you're saying, had been a little bit more. I think you said it perfectly. I guess if they would have just left a little bit more of it to the imagination and not over-explained it, it would have been more satisfying.
Well, if you think about it, Chris, and again, I'm digging too deep in this second half, but honestly, I'm sitting here watching this movie in my home theater with my wife. We're sitting here watching it. And we're both
Did you watch it on Valentine's Day?
No, I didn't. But you were both commenting during the first half. We're like, this is kind of it's a good setup. Yeah, I like the situation they're playing with and all that. And honestly, the mood just shifted once I'm just going to say they enter the gorge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Once they're down there, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's what we're doing now. Okay. And it's like, again, the the relationship that had formed between these two was negligible during that whole sequence on the bottom. It's like there was nothing at all to reference and make you feel like that these two have formed the kind of relationship we saw above ground. Other than they just seem like two people in an action movie trying to help each other out and trying to protect each other. That's pretty normal. So I don't know. It was just disappointing, but I will say it was some pretty cool creature effects and things. Yeah, it was all heavy CGI, but I mean, I thought the effects and the creatures that we see are pretty cool, pretty interesting. But again, it was just so predictable. Well, so formulaic once it got down to the bottom. And I desperately just wanted them to get out of there. I'm like, please get back up to the surface and make this interesting again. And it did. Once they got back up to the surface at one point later in the film, it did kind of raise back up I'm like, oh, okay, we're back to what are they going to do now? I'm like, now I'm kind of back interested in this. But man, yeah, everything down below just didn't work. So
I was worried, but I think they did a pretty decent job. Obviously both these people are highly skilled individuals, and I was worried once it got down in the gorge, they were going to just have one or both of them kind of forget their skills and they were just going to wander around just shooting up. But no, they still seem to kind of methodically think of it like an operation. And they still, so
No, they were in their
Like
mercenary
professionals,
professional mode, but again, it's the whole relationship thing,
Yeah, I got you.
which just kind of it had no bearing whatsoever, any different than any other action movie that happened to have a male and female co-stars working together. So
I'll
you
say we haven't lobbed this criticism at a movie in a while. It is one that we have used before. We try not to, I think. But even though I was okay with like what was going on down the gorge, I think I could sum up my reaction. I didn't think about saying just make it simpler and don't reveal to us as much.
yeah.
But I felt like the film, which was the disappointment because the first half was not this way, but the second half kind of devolved into kind of a video game.
Yeah.
That's kind of what, different scenarios that were taking place down the gorge, but it was kind of like, okay, we've leveled up, we've seen that, and now we're leveling up. And like, so that to me kind of was the problem.
No, it is. That really was. It just is. A movie. I'm all for movies taking tonal shifts, but this is one where it was just like letting the air out of a balloon. It's just, I just felt like, okay. So this is where we are. This is what we got to deal with for the next little bit. Hopefully they can get out of this phase of the film and move on back to interesting things. So anyway, that was The Gorge. Looking at it, I have to look at the writing involved. I'm always curious to see if there's a film that I feel like the scripting of it, the pacing of the film, or the decisions it makes to lead characters down. I always got to look at the writer of the film. Yeah, the director has some sway over that, but the writer ultimately is the one that kind of crafted this out. Zach Dean is the writer of The Gorge. Looking at his credits, he wrote one of the Fast and Furious movies. I think it was Fast X.
Okay.
He wrote the Chris Pratt movie, The Tomorrow War, which we never talked about.
I think, was that an Amazon
It was an
film?
Amazon movie. I don't think we ever saw it.
I have not. I've heard of it, but
And I think that's really about it. And then another movie I never heard of, 24 Hours to Live.
okay.
So, I've not seen Fast X. I've not seen The Tomorrow War. I can't comment on if the writing style, carries on or if that's where some things tripped up for me. But I do feel like he just had a good premise, just didn't know what to do with it to sustain a whole movie. And I think there would have been ways to do it.
It's about half of a good script.
Half of a decent script.
Right.
I'll say that. Half of a decent script. So, that's The Gorge. You got anything else to say about it?
No, I think we kind of talked about everything that we could, all the points we needed to make. So I still think, like you kind of said, if you like, action movies and I think it's okay.
It is decent escapist entertainment. I will say I've talked to a few people I know, family members even, that are not huge movie people that will still watch this and still said, yeah, it was fun. They enjoyed it, had a good time. And I do think it is decent escapist entertainment. But I do, from a critical standpoint, I gotta say, I feel like it lost a lot from me as the movie went on, and I wish it could have maintained the level it was working on in that first half. So
Agreed.
Yeah.
And we've said it. I think the goodwill that it built up in that first half helped me still like it.
Did carry it
in the
enough.
second
You're
half.
right.
Yeah.
I didn't check out of the movie completely. I was still wanting to see where it went. But
Sure.
Yeah. And I will say, there's an action sequence involving a Jeep on the side of a mountain. I thought was pretty good.
Okay.
Maybe because it was actually trying to leave the gorge. I'm like, yes, let's watch it. No, I thought that was pretty good.
Okay.
There's a rappelling across the gorge.
Yes.
I thought was pretty thrilling, pretty well done, pretty exciting to watch. So But can I just ask a quick question? This is just a nitpicky comment on the film, and
Yes.
just to wrap up our review.
Sure.
This has no bearing on my review of the film. Just I have
Okay.
to ask because my wife and I had a disagreement about this.
Okay.
Do you think
So I'm being asked to settle this
early in the
disagreement.
film, first half of the film,
Okay.
and the two characters are having their kind of distance relationship, and they're kind of doing the signs back to one another, and then one of them puts on music using a little, I guess, taking a turntable and like a little portable speaker and
Yes.
starts blaring music.
Yes.
And they're at the top and dancing and trying to get the
Yes.
other person to dance.
Yes.
Moments later is when we have the first attack from things coming up from the gorge. Did the music Did she mess that up by playing music really loud and bringing those creatures out, or was that just coincidental? Do you think do you think the music like got their attention and got them up?
Okay.
Because my theory is I think that Anna Taylor-Joy's character actually messes up several times in this film, like makes mistakes that I think is kind of surprising. And if the music is true, that her music brought the creatures up this first time, then you could almost argue the whole premise of the movie was kind of her fault. But anyway, go ahead. Did you get that at all? Did you get that?
No.
Okay.
But I could say that is an interesting theory. And I'd be curious. I mean, we can't do spoil, but I'd be curious what you think the other instances where she kind of messes up.
There's one place where a bag is left somewhere where, it shouldn't have been left. And because of that, people are able to manipulate them in a way. There was another thing she did. I forgot. I just thought that was like, wow, she's making some mistakes here. But the music was the big one for me. If she's blaring this music and all of a sudden now like creatures start coming up from the gorge, I'm like, did she wake them up?
The way they had the gorge secured, obviously creatures do try to come up every now and then because of the way they had, they basically have like landmines on the side of the gorge. But it is interesting whether it's just a plot convenience that they're trying to break this and get us into the action part of the film, or there's an argument to be made that maybe that instance like encouraged them to kind of make a wave. Because before that, I don't think they say these rules. You have to report in every couple of days, and you have to patrol the perimeter of each side of the gorge.
But you're not supposed to have any contact with the other side.
So they broke that rule. I don't know if there was a don't play loud
noises. I don't know
if there was but maybe there was, because the whole thing is supposed to be kind of secretive. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
So
anyway,
it's interesting.
That's just a little family debate we have there. I was hoping you might have some insight on it. But,
so you're laying on the side of she may have caused the
No, actually, I'm not the one. Actually, my wife believes that she caused the whole thing by playing the music. Okay. I was willing to let that one slide because I didn't think that was the problem. But then after pointing that out, I did notice there were like 2 or 3 other instances where her character did make some poor decisions, and I'm like, oh. Yeah. Okay. Well, that wasn't good. Well, okay.
See,
that
actually,
jumping into the gorge,
correct,
parachuting in,
correct,
without a whole lot of information on what's being transpired here, and
because the situation dictated that she needed to hurry up. I mean, she was
afraid. I don't know. I just felt like. Well, and she came. Oh, and then something was lost out of her bag.
But that's not her fault.
Well, but it could have been secured a little better. I'm just saying.
Okay, actually,
I'm just saying. I felt like there was the mistakes, and it's nothing. I mean, it's nothing against. Somebody in the movie has to make mistakes to make some things happen.
But if that's true, see, it was all habit. If that is true, which I'd have to go back and watch it again, that actually disappoints me some, because instead that kind of would lean more towards the heroine in distress. And the guy, and if that's the case, that does disappoint me, because I thought it was kind of equally shared. They were both real capable people, but if they do make her out to be like, oh well, she's
and I never thought it was like she's clumsy or whatever. I thought it was playing up more the idea that I think we get the idea that she may be a better marksman than him, because that's kind of a little thing that we're alluding to.
Yes,
but she's also a little more careless in things, which I think the story kind of bears that out. Okay. He is much more protected and much more, by
He's
the
more
book.
Locked down.
Yeah, a little more by the book. But the time he decides to break the rules, which is him paying a visit, actually ends up being a problem, because when he comes back, that's when things go to pot. So anyway.
So the moral of the gorge is never take chances.
Don't take chances. Play by the rules. Okay. Don't step outside the lines.
Right. Gotcha.
And that's the idea.
Interesting.
Okay. And don't sign up for anything Sigourney Weaver calls you and asks you to do. Because I think, well, you got to decide. When Sigourney Weaver calls you, is it the Sigourney Weaver from the Alien movies or from the movies we like? Does she seem cool? Or we're like, okay, we're good. Or is she obviously playing bad person vibes? Right. If she's playing bad guy vibes, if she's playing bad villain vibes, don't do whatever she asks you to do, because it's
going to
no
end
good.
Poorly.
It's no good. Right. Okay. I think we've talked enough about The Gorge. Apple TV Plus exclusive, The Gorge. It is on Apple TV Plus right now for your viewing enjoyment. We're both coming out generally okay, positive on it. I think Chris is more positive on it than I am, but we're both saying it's not a bad watch. And it's a decent entertainment and has some good things going for it. So we're going with that. Okay, Chris. I tell you what. Before we do our break,
Yes.
let's talk. Let's go ahead and talk another film.
Okay.
And then we'll break and do other stuff. The big release this past weekend was Captain America: Brave for New World. That I went to go see.
As did I.
Because that's just who I am. I was actually kind of surprised you went to go see it. I didn't think it would be an opening weekend thing for you, but kudos to you for doing that. Great.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to guess the reason I went to go see it is I think the reason we're actually talking about it. The
Okay.
soapbox that you may have been
All right.
about to get on, maybe.
Yeah, I just have a little commentary to make on this, and I do want to hear your thoughts on the film.
Okay,
And I'll
sure.
share my thoughts as well. Captain America: Brave New World is the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe entry. Marvel has had a little rough go in the past year to 2 years max. I think basically, if you look at the past several films they've put out outside of Deadpool and Wolverine, okay, that's
Right.
kind of an exception.
Right.
And that one, I think you kind of have to hold off to the side because it wasn't yes, it was a Disney Marvel production, but it was carrying a lot of other content and material with it.
Basically carrying Deadpool, bringing
Right. And it's just that it was a franchise that already existed in the Fox Marvel world, whatever, bringing in. So it's a whole different animal. And it was a
going
huge
towards
hit.
a totally different audience.
Oh, absolutely.
Because R and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So that one you kind of have to hold off to the side. That was a huge hit. So we're not going to discount that.
Sure.
But outside of that, more the traditional Marvel movies that have been in the last year, we had Ant-Man and the Wasp. What was it? Quantumania,
Yes.
which I did not like.
I did not either.
We had the Marvels, which I liked,
liked
but
it,
nobody
okay.
else liked. Well,
I liked it, okay.
Most
Yeah.
people and critics and definitely box office did not like.
Right.
What else has there been? What other Marvel movies were there?
Wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was probably their last hit outside of Deadpool Wolverine, you know. But I mean, they had enough of these movies that just didn't perform well. And then they've had some TV shows in the interim that also didn't do as well, didn't get a lot of good critical acclaim and all that. So anyway, so here we are. We've got 3 Marvel movies coming out this year, Chris.
Right.
We've got Captain America: Brave New World just
Right.
came out last weekend. We have
Thunderbolts
coming out in May, I believe. And then we have the Fantastic Four coming out in July. So that is our 3 movies for the year from Marvel. This was the one I was probably the least excited about of those 3. I'll go ahead and tell you.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Least interested in Captain America: Brave New World. But we did go see it. And Chris, I'll tell you, I liked the movie. I thought it was fine. I thought it was fun. I had a good time with it. Is it the best Marvel? No, absolutely not. Is it the best action movie I've seen? No, it's definitely not. Right. Was it at least fun, good entertainment? I found myself enjoying it. Yes, absolutely. And I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
But before I do, I'll just go ahead and preface this to say, I think the film critic community has I feel like there's a bit of a bandwagon approach towards Marvel movies right now where it's like, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like when I was really surprised. I came out of the theater watching this movie. I'm like, okay, it was all right. I liked most of it, and I thought it was fun, and I enjoyed it. I went online to go see what others were saying. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are just savaging this thing. Like I'm seeing 1-star reviews from a lot of critics I trust too, like people I follow. I'm like, oh my God, what did I miss? What is the deal? And it seems to be most people are arguing about it and getting upset because it has so many callbacks and references to a completely different movie, which is The Incredible Hulk, which was the one that Edward Norton did.
Right.
One of the very first Marvel MCU movies. That was not a terribly successful movie, but it did kind of help ramp things up, for Marvel many, many years ago. And there's a lot of references to that movie. There's a lot of characters carried over from that and all that. And people are saying, well, I didn't like the movie because Captain America wasn't the main character. It was all spent on these other stuff from the Hulk world. And I'm like, Okay, I didn't get that, but all right, if that's your criticism, does that really warrant a 1-star review for the film? I don't know. Anyway, all that to say, this is where I get a little burnout with the film critic community, because I do feel like there's some bandwagon jumping on.
Oh, sure.
Where everybody's like wanting to pile on. Like, what is the type of film that we just want to pile on now because it's kind of the fashionable thing to do? And I just wonder if the Marvel movies are kind of stuck in that. And it's going to take a really revolutionary type of movie from them to break that cycle now. Anyway, my thought, over to you. What did you think of the film? And do you see what I'm saying, or do you have any agreement with what I'm on what I'm fabricating here?
So there are a couple of different things there. So
Yeah.
I'll take off, or first off, I'll say the reason I went to go see the film is because I'd seen a lot of chatter online, people slamming it.
Yeah.
And I've gone on record when we've reviewed, comic book films, Marvel films specifically, saying that I was kind of, I'm worn down.
You're worn down by them.
But
yeah.
I don't, I'll still give something a chance. I want every movie to be, and I felt like maybe there was a little bit of a bandwagon approach where people were just, it was fun to pile on Marvel movies. Like they're, just slam them. Even, these Brave New World's not trying to be a contender for the next Oscar season. It's, it's a comic book movie. It's a genre. And I think, as a kid growing up, I wanted nothing more than more Star Wars movies. They made 3, they stopped for a long time. And then when they came out with those prequels, starting with The Phantom Menace, and then in retrospect, I loved that film when it came out. In retrospect, yeah, there's some problems with it. But it was because they gave me such a break and built up anticipation. Yeah. And I think for better, for worse, and I understand maybe making some business, we talked about that many times, Marvel was just not able to mess up until after Endgame. It just seemed like they were just an unstoppable juggernaut, making tons of money. It made people flock to the theaters, just all this stuff. And then, after you hit that high point, it hasn't really been able to bounce back, except for Deadpool, Wolverine. But I see that they must still be making money, because if they weren't, they wouldn't keep making them, because I assume these are expensive. You can see the credits at the end of the film. You're like, my goodness. So my experience with the film was, I thought it was okay.
Okay. Okay is good. I'll take okay.
No, and it wasn't like, I wasn't as disappointed. Going in with low expectations, there were things that did frustrate me where I didn't feel like the character that's done by Tim Blake Nelson, I thought was very slapdash, because I think there's a lot of background there that could have been more forefronted, would have made it more interesting. But instead, the character is mystery, and then they're like, "Oh, here he is," and you're like, "Okay." And then
I'm with you on that,
because I'm pretty sure there is like a pretty lengthy background with him. Like, is it Mastermind? Is that the
leader? The leader.
Okay, so. But I felt like, there's so much stuff there. And it was just like, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And then I was like, well, that kind of does, doesn't it?
No, you're right. I echo your thoughts on that.
So, but I appreciated that coming to the forefront, because I was worried that only whatever you call Red Hulk.
Red Hulk.
Okay.
Or Rolk.
I was afraid that was going to be the main conflict in the film, because we knew Red Hulk was going to be in it, because they showed you that in the trailer. So there was no mystery. And so I was kind of anticipating being really bored because of already knowing what was going to, and I figured Red Hulk wouldn't kind of appear until the end, and all that stuff. But there was something else going on. I just felt like they could have developed it a little better.
Agreed.
Also, I'm kind of frustrated, but I understand it's the comics. I don't know why they felt like, I guess because that's the way it was in the comics, that Captain America immediately had to get a sidekick of Falcon. And I wish this film, and I understand maybe that's because he was the Falcon and then he becomes Captain America, and you don't want all that technology to go to waste. I just wish they would have waited one more film to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because then I could see how all the other subplots going on, to me, didn't make it feel like it wasn't Captain America's movie. But I felt like it had to be Captain America and the Falcons movie. And that did disappoint me a little bit.
That's fair. I think that's fair.
Does that make sense? And I think, the character and him bringing him along and teaching me, like, okay. But it just, I don't know, way back. And I'll say, I did like, this is going to be surprising for people to hear, I did like the giant CGI battle between Captain America and the Hulk.
Yes.
I liked it.
I did too. I thought it was really fun.
I did too.
People want to joke about the whole Harrison Ford turning into the Hulk. I think it worked. I'm like, I totally bought it. I'm like, it was great.
And I like that. What I didn't like was another action sequence that I felt went on too long and bored me, maybe because it's biased. I don't like Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick.
Oh.
But all the flying and zipping around in the air, which I understand, this Captain America is able to fly, got you, and Falcon flies, got you. But them like flying around doing battle with jets and all this kind of stuff, I was just like, it just felt very generic. I got lost.
Yeah.
I felt like I could have been in a Top Gun movie. And so
it was not directed as well as it could have been. I think it could have been made a little bit. I enjoyed it, but I do agree it was a bit more chaotic than it needed to be and not as easy to follow, which hurts enjoyment of it. Okay, I think we're on the same page with this film. I did like it for the same reasons. I did have some of the same misgivings you did. But again, to kind of come out of this and say it's a 1-star movie.
I feel like that's a little...
That's just finding some reasons to want to pile on some hate, I feel like. This movie delivers what it was supposed to be delivering, which is it's Anthony Mackie as Captain America, which I think he's good.
He is.
In that role. It is a continuation of a comic book series. Absolutely. There are villains that reappear. There are supporting characters that come back into existence. It's continuing on serialization of a previous story into a new story. There's cameos. There's fights. it is what it is. It's a Marvel comic book movie. And all I got to say is I was sitting in the theater next to a family with some young kids, boys probably in the 8, 9, 10-year-old range.
Okay.
They were eating it up like you would not believe. Right. And I'm like, you know what? That works right there. It's like, this is fun stuff. So
well, I guess, it's a thing where you and I, because we're not forced to watch any movie. Right. Some film critics who do work for news publications or something, like they don't have a choice. And so I guess I would hate to have to do that. And then I like take it out on the film because it's like, I didn't want to review this and I hated it. So I give it a star. But like in general, you and I probably don't give many 1-star reviews on this show. I don't know if we ever have because
I have, but
was that Sasquatch Sunset?
It's very few.
Okay. But in general, it's because we get the privilege of kind of selecting what we go see.
True. Very true.
You said you were kind of surprised I went to go see this. It's just because I still like kind of comic books. Yeah. I do like some Avengers movies. So I was hoping that this would actually kind of be a restarter for them. And I don't feel like it was, but it's not the cast's fault. I felt like ultimately the script kind of let them down a little bit. Yeah,
no, I don't think this movie is a one that's like restarting the grandeur of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we had back during Avengers Endgame. I don't think it brought us back up to that level of enthusiasm. I think at least this was a good treading water movie. It's like this at least felt like it was keeping the Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of still keeping it in the water, still keeping it paddling.
Sure.
It didn't drown us any. We didn't drop any. It's just kind of, we're still here. We're still good. We're still cranking out some films. Everything's okay.
Right.
And I think that's also why they didn't release this one as like the only one for this year. They're like, we've got this movie. It's pretty good, but we've got some others down the road that we're probably feeling like are going to elevate us a little bit further. So let's drop this one into February. And then we got 2 big movies we really want to focus in on for the summer.
And I wonder, we'll never know because that's just not the way Hollywood works these days, but I wonder if they would get back on the good graces of some film critics if they would take more of a hiatus. I wonder, because there were people that hated on the Star Wars franchise, and I wonder if by the time that comes back around, when they make another movie, like
a
I
little
wonder
more spaced out.
If it'll do better. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a balance. I don't know if only releasing one movie a year like they did last year is the best move for them. But I also don't think doing three movies and TV shows in the same year. There was a magic that they had, I think, leading up to Infinity War and Endgame, where they were doing about 2 movies a year, and they were all kind of building. And like, honestly, if they'd waited a year in between each movie, I think it would have lost a lot of momentum. I think they really needed to capitalize on that. So there's a magic formula somewhere in the middle. I think they went overboard after Endgame with the volume of movies, and that, I think, hurt ultimately. And the fact that they haven't really had a consistent through line. I mean, the whole Jonathan Majors King thing, I think, really hurt as well because
Sure.
I think they were trying to go for something with that and then they couldn't in the end. So anyway,
And they've now pivoted away completely from that character, right? Because of how,
yeah. I mean, it's all about Doctor Doom now, which is
Right.
going to be the big villain for them as they go forward. That's kind of where they're building up to down the road. So anyway,
Gotcha.
no, okay, all right. Well, I'm happy to hear that you found the movie okay. Like,
And something I think one
Yeah.
of my biggest surprises in the film, the fact that there was more than one villain, which I was happy about. I was surprised that it pulled as much from the Eternals film as it did.
yes,
Because the Eternals, that was at the time when that's a perfect example when we're talking about, critics liking or disliking movies and piling on bandwagons and stuff. After Endgame, we talked about how they were struggling and the Eternals happened. And that was such a huge swing, very different. You had Chloe Zhao who did things like Nomadland and she made a Marvel movie. And, it didn't all work, but it was such a big swing that I was like,
something.
well, at least they tried something different.
Yeah. That's actually a movie I keep meaning to want to go back and see
I
again
wanna go
because
back
I've
and
only
see it
seen
again
it
too.
once. And I think it's an interesting movie. Yeah, you're right. Not completely successful. And I think where it hurts itself is where it tries to fit into
The mold.
the Marvel universe
Sure.
more, and you can feel that. You can feel the film almost like bending
Yeah.
to try to fit into that mold, and that's where it doesn't work. But if it's left on its own, the moments it can kind of be creative with itself, I thought it was pretty good.
So I was surprised.
It was
that-
good to see it actually referenced in this
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. It's like a big, huge kind of plot.
Well,
thing.
think about it. This movie hinges on two movies that were not terribly successful Marvel movies in the past. Like The Incredible Hulk was not a big hit when it came out. Part of the reason Edward Norton is no longer the Incredible Hulk is
Right.
this movie didn't really work as well for people. And then The Eternals was considered kind of a misfire and not a
Right.
big hit. But yet this movie grounds itself on those two films. I'm like, well, that's a pretty good move. I like that.
Yeah,
So-
I thought that was interesting. So I was like, interesting that the Eternals plays such a huge part.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Good. I feel a little better.
Okay.
Thank you. I
Okay.
did come into this conversation maybe a little fiery, and hearing you talk about it and us talking out a little bit, I feel a little better. So
I mean, it's a fine line. You shouldn't just give anything a pass. Which
Right.
you're not doing.
No.
But you also should just pile on a bandwagon because
just-
it's just a little.
well, or at least if you're
harsh.
going to rate something low, or try to dissuade people from seeing it, have a good reason based on the movie itself, not expectations going into the movie, or
Sure.
because the movie didn't deliver what you felt like it was supposed to or should have. I don't like that idea for film criticism. I think you need to base a film on what you get. In that 1 hour to 2 hour, 3 hour amount of time, that's what you've got. That's what you base your review on. And you can not like it. You can still come out of it with a 1-star review, but just don't make the 1-star review be because, well, the film should have been about this character or shouldn't have referenced this other film or should.
Also surprising, you mentioned, then we'll move on, but it occurred to me, because I was kind of surprised they did it in the film, and then you referenced how Eternals and the original Incredible Hulk, not successful films. Interesting how in this film, they mention Ant-Man not once, but at least twice, and the last Marvel film that really didn't do well, and I think a lot of people really came down on it, and you and I
Was an
were not
Ant-Man
fans,
film.
was Quantum Mania. So interesting, it's like, I don't know, kind of like their flippancy and being like, okay, you didn't like it, but whatever. So I guess kind of courageous to name drop
Maybe.
Ant-Man twice. And maybe it's like a knowing, winking thing, because one character, he like gives him a hard time, like, oh, you just want to meet Ant-Man. Oh, you just want to like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting.
All right.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
No, it was an interesting film.
Yeah.
Look, and I'm all about Harrison Ford's Red Hulk, man. Love it. Thought he was good.
Well, and I guess because I based a lot of his character on Shrinking, that's an Apple TV Plus show. But he is very curmudgeonly, and I guess Harrison Ford seems to exude in his public persona, I guess, maybe a little bit of being a curmudgeon. So in this kind of being cranky and maybe easy to anger, it was kind of like a funny commentary in
Yeah.
a way, like a winking commentary. So.
But can we just exist in a world or can we just imagine a world
Okay.
where they were not revealing the Red Hulk thing in any marketing, any promotion, whatever?
Yeah,
How much more fun would that have been?
a lot.
That would have been awesome. I mean, I would have been that would have been so good. I get it, Marvel. I know you can't do that. I know you have to promote and show it because that's what's going to get people to the theater. Most of the people in the theater were probably there to wait and see this happen. So you got it. I get it, but man,
Yeah, it would have been
how
nice.
great would that have been? What a
Yeah.
great surprise. We just don't have surprises like that in movies anymore. So that would have been really fun.
True.
To see Harrison Ford evolve into a Hulk, like as a surprise would have been.
That would have been
so good.
pretty epic. Agreed.
Okay, Chris, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we just have a trailer I want to show you for a film coming out soon by A24 Studios. And then you've got a recommendation to share with us for a film you think we ought to check out. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back with Foot Candle Films here in just a moment.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. I'm glad we're not keeping in the audio from our break time, Chris, because we continued our little my little rant session, and
Sure.
you did a good job of talking me down off the ledge there too. So I appreciate that. But anyway, let's get back to our show here, Chris. We like to show trailers from time to time.
Yes.
Of films that are coming out. That look interesting, or we're just kind of excited to see. Hopefully, it's ones that will not build up any unfair expectations. And we've also found ourselves hovering around a lot of trailers from the A24 studio universe. For whatever reason, those always are just the trailers the films that look really interesting and kind of get our attention. And I don't know, we give them a little bit of a pass. If we see that label stamped on a film, we're like, all right, we'll check this out and see what we think.
They're not known, and I cannot think of any that they don't do sequels.
True.
So they didn't really do franchise. They have some filmmakers that do a lot of films with them, but in general, it's like they do create original films, which therefore it kind of interests a little more
nice.
because we don't know anything about it. So,
Yeah. So I'm excited to show you this trailer. This is a film called Friendship.
Okay.
This film is going to be premiering at South by Southwest on March 9th.
Okay.
It's going to be coming out in theatrical release in May. So
Okay.
we've got a couple
bit
more
of a
months
window.
on that. We're waiting, or 3 months on that. It stars a Mr. Paul Rudd, calling back to Ant-Man. Your
like
comments
him.
from before, yep. And a Tim Robinson. Are you familiar with Tim Robinson?
I am
Okay.
only in. I'd heard people talk about his show, I believe, on Netflix.
I Think You Should Leave.
I think you should leave. Yes, and my wife and I watched maybe half an episode, and she's like, "Not for me."
All right. Well, it's
I
totally.
have not given the rest of it a chance. I think if we were to soldier through, I think some of it would appeal because I kind of understand what his brand of comedy and everything is. And it's a very specific,
Yes.
awkward type thing. But yes, I am familiar with
Well,
it.
I am a big fan of
Okay.
I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. He was on Saturday Night Live for a few seasons.
Really?
I was not a fan of his on the show, but I honestly think that's because the show format just didn't work for his style of humor and comedy. So him getting to do this show on his own on Netflix now, then you get to see where his head is, and I'm totally on board with what he's doing on that show. So I like the idea of him being in a movie. I like the idea of him being in an A24 movie. I like him being in a movie with Paul Rudd.
Now, is he writing it?
Let's see
Or
here.
did he write it? I guess since it's already done. Because I'm assuming the show that he does, probably on Netflix, he writes a lot of the material on there. I would guess, maybe.
I am looking to see. I'm trying
maybe
to
he
figure
just
out
gets to
the
do-
writing credits on this.
Or maybe he just gets to do his own brand of comedy, you're saying, on the Netflix show. So that's what.
Yeah, I'm not seeing who wrote the film.
Okay.
Oh, no, Andrew DeYoung wrote it
Okay.
and directed the film. So
Okay.
Andrew DeYoung is the writer and director. So Tim Robinson not writing this.
Okay.
Anyway, the premise of the film is, in Friendship, suburban dad Craig, played by Tim Robinson, falls hard for his charismatic new neighbor, played by Paul Rudd, as Craig's attempts to make an adult male friend threaten to ruin both of their lives. So let me just show the trailer for
Okay.
Friendship, and we'll talk about it on the other side here. Here we go.
Hey guys, this is my neighbor Craig. He's the best.
I was just spiraling. I mean, I see the way the guys look at her. I'm scared.
Sheila's lucky to have a dad like you.
Boy, you should know that I've got you on my mind, your secret admirer. I've been watching you at night. I think of you. I want to be your baby.
If your game is on, give me a call, boo. If your love is strong,
I can see the future. It's full of pals. I'm on the edge of life, and the view is gorgeous.
Look, we had a couple of really nice hangs, but I think it best that we go our separate ways. I don't wish to continue this friendship.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's the trailer for Friendship.
So Paul Rudd, was it I Love You Man? That was him and Jason Segel?
Yes.
And it was, so this is like the dark, twisted version
Correct.
of that.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think they referenced in the trailer.
They did. They had a little,
I Love You Man for sickos.
A little critics poll for that. You got the word both hilarious and also nightmare on the same trailer. So I have enough confidence with these two actors. I have enough confidence with A24. I'm like, all right, I'm on board. Let's see what happens with this.
It has my interest.
All right. So that is coming out in May in theaters. I don't know what kind of release it's looking at, if it's going to be a bigger release or if they're going to be keeping it small. We'll see when it comes to May. I think a lot of it will be how it plays in South by Southwest here in a couple weeks. So.
Sure.
All right. Well, Chris, we're going to wrap up the show here with your recommendation of the episode. This is where Chris likes to share with us a film that he recently caught up with or got to see either for the first time or revisiting, but is warranted enough of a recommendation from him to share with us here on the episode. So, Chris, what have you got for us today?
So I'm going to recommend a movie that I'm kind of surprised that Alan hasn't seen yet. But Alan is a very busy man. But this is a film that the main character is a solitary cat. And, animals, but this animal does not talk. And it is nominated for 2 Academy Awards, coming up, the Academy Awards. It is Flow. It is now available, which is why I'm recommending it. You can watch it on Max. It started streaming actually on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
But the story is a solitary cat displaced by a great flood finds refuge on a boat with various species and must navigate the challenges of adapting to a transformed world together. I gave a quick little review over on Letterboxd and said basically it was a kitty and some friends meandering around an updated Myst landscape, because that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's not a slight, because I really liked the game Myst back when I used to play it. It was awesome. So it is a very different type of animated film because there's no talking and it's just a very experiential film. I wish I had been able to see, because it was released in theaters, I wish I would have been able to see it in a theater with like all the sound and everything. But as it was, it's still a cool experience. So I think it stands maybe an outsider chance of winning an Academy Award because it's nominated in both animated feature film and also international. It has it in both places, I believe. So that's Flow, and it's now available on Max. So check it out.
I will tell you, thank you for recommending that. On the Apple TV, my little Apple TV box, it's got the little, on the Apple TV app, it shows you what's coming up next. And you can add, like if you're watching a show, it shows you what next episode is available.
Gotcha.
And also movies I have added to my watch list. It will kind of push up the list and show me. And Flow is the number one position on on there. Mainly because, interestingly enough, we just brought a new cat into our house. Who is a solid black cat.
Nice.
And that just happened in the last 2 weeks.
Is the cat's name now Flo?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But it's just interesting that film, is available on Max about the same time as we bring this solid black cat into our house. Huh. And also, yes, I told my wife, because she's the big cat person, with that, I'm like, Yeah, we probably need to queue that up and give it a watch. So glad to hear your recommendation on that. It does look interesting. I'm tipping my hand. I have filled out my Oscar ballot.
Okay.
I do have Flow as winning for Best Animated Film.
Okay. I think it could.
Okay. We'll see. I don't have it for Best International Film.
Right.
But I do have it for Best Animated Film. So we'll see if that plays out. But I haven't even seen it. I'm basing that purely off of just what I've read, seen, or heard. But I'm looking forward to watching it myself. Okay. Thank you for the recommendation, Chris. Flow is available now on Max with that subscription. And I think that wraps us up for today. So we had our review of The Gorge, a generally okay, positive review of The Gorge. Ranging from generally acceptable to slightly better than acceptable with Chris. We also had our soapbox discussion and mini review of Captain America Brave New World, which I was very happy to hear that Chris thought was okay.
Yeah.
And then we had our trailer for Friendship coming out in May, and then your recommendation of Flow. All right, Chris, if anybody has any feedback for us, thoughts, questions, ideas, suggestions for us, or even some recommendations they want to share with us that we can help relate on a future episode, how can they converse with us?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Facebook, Foot Candle Film Society, Instagram and Threads. We're just Foot Candle Film. We are on Blue Sky as well, Twitter @Foot Candle Film. Al and I are on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing and leave quick takes sometimes. Do us a favor. If you like the show, sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Oh, Chris is getting very emotional about this.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Do us a favor, give us a star rating, write a review, share with friends on whatever service you get your favorite podcasts on, because it'll help us reach new listeners, and we'd appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll look forward to talking to everybody next time. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.